Now it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of Plenary Session 4, Steve Wackowski. Steve grew up in Anchorage and spent his summers working at his family's fishing business in Ninilchik, Alaska. After college, he earned a commission in the Air Force Reserve and went to work on U.S. Senator Stevens' staff in Washington, D.C. Steve served as a professional staff member for the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee and as Senator Stevens' last serving press secretary. The highlight of Steve's career was working on Senator Murkowski's 2010 write-in campaign as her communications director. It was a wild ride. I saw that. He often tells people that he got more sleep during his deployments to Afghanistan than he did on Lisa's campaign. That's also true. In his Air Force-sponsored graduate school research, Steve conducted drone flights from an icebreaker in the high Arctic. He holds the high-latitude world record for ship-based UAS operations. Steve moved back home 2 years ago after his last active-duty Air Force tour to work for a UAS remote sensing company, Tulugaq. They just completed a large project in Wainwright with the University of Alaska where they flew UAS 100 miles offshore around the oil lease area in the Chukchi. Steve's proudest accomplishment is marrying his wife, Lindsay, who is expecting a baby boy in March. Please join me in welcoming Steve Wackowski.
Thank you, Rachel, for that humbling introduction. If you guys have this on video, make sure to send me a YouTube clip so I can send it to my wife about my proudest accomplishment. And while we're on the topic of IT, I have a new Wi-Fi password for everyone. So maybe at some point you guys can make a slide of this. But the new NetID username, you're going to enter event 0073. It's all in lowercase. The password is the same. It's 2015 Arctic Encounter Symposium. So same password on this sheet, just a different login. Again, it's event 0073. So now to my business. It's my honor to host and moderate this plenary session, Charting the Path to the Alaskan Arctic, the 2015 Policy Report. I'd like to introduce to you two distinguished public servants of the Alaska State Legislature. First, I'd like to introduce you to Senator Lesil McGuire, who is the co-chair of the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission and also the chair of the Alaska State Legislature's Senate Arctic Committee. She has served in the state legislature for 15 years, was elected to the Senate in 2006, and most recently elected in 2010. Before her work in the state legislature, her and I have some shared experience. She also served on the press staff of Senator Stevens, although I'm sure you got yelled at a lot less than I did. So, she went to Willamette University where she received her undergraduate degree and JD, and she brought with her today her son Grayson, who I'm told is one of the best 8-year-old salmon fishermen in the state. So if you want some fish stories, come find Grayson. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Representative Herron as well because they're going to actually tag team their presentation and their slides together. Representative Herron lives in Bethel. He's got 3 children and 5 grandkids. His oldest daughter is just about to graduate from your youngest daughter is just about ready to graduate from Gonzaga University. He's serving in the House his 4th term. He is the House Majority Whip, also the co-chair of the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission and the chair of the House Arctic Committee. Before he served in the state legislature, he was a businessman and served as Bethel's city manager for 7 years. One thing I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, Representative Herron is also a Marine. He was a computer programmer in the Marine Corps. I didn't realize they had those, but as he reminded me, a Marine is always a rifleman first. Hooah. So without further ado, Senator McGuire and Representative Herron.
Well, good morning. It's good to be here and see so many friends, so many colleagues, distinguished guests. So usually you pan the room and you see who's got the highest rank. And you start with that person and then you mention others. So I'd like to do that. The person that has the highest rank in this room is my wife, Margaret. And so, of course, friends of mine and the senator is, of course, Senator Lesil Wackowski, Fran Ulmer, Meade Treadwell, Reggie Jewell, many others, and that is too long of a list. And it's been an honor for me to get to know and work with them on this policy issue. And I also, as Senator McGuire has been noted, is there are 3 people that are sitting legislators in the Alaska legislature that did work for Senator Stephen. Myself, Lesil, and Max Gruenberg. So, Lesil?
Well, good morning, everyone. Can you hear us? Okay, great. It's nice to see all of your faces. We've been asked this morning to give a summary of our final report from the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission. And what Bob and I decided to do, we're going to make it as brief as possible, knowing that many of you in the room are familiar with the work. Actually, we have in the room, I think, 9 of the members of the 26 that have served on the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission. And I was going to just go ahead and start by introducing you. I agree that Mrs. Herron is the most important introduced, and now that we've introduced her, if I could have Stephanie Madsen stand, Reggie Jewell, the Honorable Mayor Reggie Jewell, Christine Hess, Admiral Abel, Jamie Robinson, Fran Ulmer, former Lieutenant Governor Meade Treadwell, and Alice Rogoff, the publisher of the Alaska Dispatch newspaper. Please give them a round of applause for all their work. For the law students that are in the room and others, what I think you can take away from this is local government at its finest. It's often been said that the states and the local governments are the laboratories, and they should be. And the theme this year is listening to the people of the Arctic. And so this report is an experiment in that. 26 Alaskans with wide-ranging views on the Arctic, some from more of the environmental conservation perspective, some from more of the development perspective, people from the private sector, people from academia, and people from government coming together over the course of 2 years, listening sessions throughout the state of Alaska, from Barrow all the way down to Unalaska, and then, of course, putting into place through subcommittee work policies for the state. And this is our final report. They're available to you. Jesse Logan, I want to introduce as well. This is our staff, and Nakush Carlo. Nakush, where are you? If we could give them a round of applause too. Your staff is the most important. This is the summary of what we have. There are 2 larger reports that are available for those of you that are Arctic wonks out there. And we have akarctic.com where everything's available online as well. So just to start out, where's our little clicker? You got it? Okay. So Alaska is at the forefront of the emerging opportunities, and hence the theme of this particular symposium, which is listening to Alaskans, listening to the people who live in the Arctic. Our vision for the Arctic is economic and resource development, a healthy environment, as you heard many of the young people write in their own words. They're concerned about their future. They're concerned about winter coming late, the ice not coming, the ability to subsist, and jobs. A transparent decision-making process. For those of you from Washington, D.C. that are here today, I don't think you can hear us emphasize that enough. We've been, I see Brendan Kelly, and I thank him and the White House team for continuing to work with us. We'd like to see more of what Alaskans say actually integrated into policy as well. The Arctic is an integral part of our identity. Most Alaskans will tell you they are the Arctic. From Unalaska to Fairbanks to Juneau, they consider themselves people of the Arctic. It's home to many people, and it's an important part of our history, our culture, and our future. The Arctic to us represents a multitude of opportunity, and I think if there's one word that I could say today, despite what you are hearing in some of the slides from the young people and their concerns, most Alaskans view the Arctic as opportunity. It's hope. It's the future for us. As the pipeline continues to decline down to hovering above 500,000 barrels a day, we look to the Arctic as that place that might help fill that lifeline that supplies North American energy and jobs to Alaskans. These opportunities are of strategic importance, and I can't emphasize that enough, that our Policy Commission talked a lot about strategic, geopolitical, geophysical, strategic importance of the Arctic, not just to Alaska, but of course to the world, to the United States. We can't stress this point enough, that the Alaskans are the ones that live in the Arctic, that have the experience working on Arctic infrastructure, like the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and other mining and development opportunities. So look to us and look to our report.
In April of 2012, the Alaska legislature established the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission. And in part, it was a recommendation from the commission, a task force that the legislature created 2 years before. It was chaired by Reggie Jewell, the Northern Waters Task Force. And it was to develop an Arctic policy for the state and produce a strategy for its implementation. Hence the three documents: the executive summary, the final report to the legislature, and the implementation plan with three target audiences: the legislature itself, the executive branch of Alaska, and the federal government. In that implementation plan, there are projects, initiatives, and other recommendations so that all three can go forward in Arctic future. Of course, as Lesil has already mentioned, there were 10 lawmakers and 16 subject matter experts, all Alaskans. But, as you'll see in a list later, we also had some ex officios that again, the senator's already mentioned. And we coined them as our Arctic elders. But it didn't mean that they were wise in age. They were wise first. And so there are three kinds of elders, and many people have already heard this before, but for others is the first elder starts with an O. You just get older. A little e elder is a person that's of age, but they're just a little smarter. The third elder is a big E elder, and there is no age limit. You can be a big E elder at 20 years old and at 80 years old. And so those three elders, and we mean that affectionately, because of their leadership and what they've done in their careers. Of course, Admiral Abel, Admiral Tom Ostavo, Jamie Robinson, Alice Rogoff, U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan, Meade Treadwell, and Fran Ulmer. They were our guides through this process. So yesterday, the final report, the implementation plan, and the executive summary went live. It's on the web, akarctic.com. Now, the commission operated under the conviction the state is an active and willing leader and partner in Arctic decision-making with reliable expertise and resources. Furthermore, the commission has remained committed to producing a policy for Alaska's Arctic that's in the legislature right now, Senate Bill 16 and House Bill 1. And the legislature is going to look at this, and we're asking them to produce an Arctic policy, hopefully, before the U.S. State Department assumes the Arctic Council chair. It reflects the values of Alaskans, and it provides options to capitalize on these opportunities that are coming and to safeguard the risks. We believe it is a policy that will stand the test of time and act as a living document. Now, many people together came to do this, and we worked very hard, and we'll tell a couple of tough stories about that process. But at this time, I'd like to acknowledge one person specifically that if she was not our executive director, we would not have this document before us, and that is Nikush Carlo.
As I mentioned, the commission embarked on a series of listening sessions, and I want to emphasize that for the people in the room, particularly as I mentioned from Washington, D.C., that's how Alaskans make good government. We listen. And that may be something that could be incorporated into your modeling as you move forward. It's very important to us in Juneau, for example, that is 20 senators and 40 representatives, that we don't believe we have all the answers. So we go to the parts of Alaska that are the most removed from us and listen to the elders, listen to the young people, and incorporate their thoughts and their views into the policies that we make. So you can see the map there, all of the places that we traveled. And the first entire day of any Arctic policy meeting, Alaska Arctic Policy Commission meeting, was a listening session. Through the process, the commission investigated and relied on many jurisdictions, as I said, all different levels of government. I also want to say again, thank you to the federal government for listening. Brendan Kelly is here. I know Admiral Papp has been here and is probably divided among different scheduling opportunities. Say a special thank you to Senator Lisa Murkowski, who's also an Arctic elder. And would just say that the reason we didn't involve you is you've got busy work to do as our senior senator. But we thank you also, Lisa. I'd love to give her a round of applause for all your leadership in the Arctic as well. Thank you. Click to the next slide. So now I just want to articulate, and again, I emphasize this little book. So there are 3 books that came out yesterday, as Bob said, went live. And again, thank you to our staff. But this little one is a nice pocket reference for you to have and to show friends and family. We hope that all of you help us to spread the word about Arctic policy in all your conversations, dinner time, meetings, etc. There are 4 vision statements that came out of the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission, and they are the following. The first is to uphold the state's commitment to an economically vibrant community, sustained by development activities consistent with the state's responsibility for a healthy environment. And again, I can't emphasize this enough, with only 735,000 people, but the largest landmass, we were granted through our Statehood Act state status based on the opportunities that were there to develop our natural resources. And many of those resources sit in the Arctic. So it's imperative that this first vision statement, it sits as number 1 for us in our state, because we know that you can't have healthy communities if you don't have jobs. And developing our natural resources responsibly is the way you get those good paying jobs. Number 2, our vision is that we collaborate on all levels of government with tribes, industry, non-governmental organizations, all to achieve transparent and inclusive Arctic decision-making, resulting in a more informed, sustainable, and beneficial outcome to the people of Alaska and the United States. 3, to enhance the security of the state through a safe and secure Arctic for individuals and communities. And you'll see a lot about this referenced in our report. We sit, as I said, in a geophysical location and certainly in proximity to Russia. We have tremendous fish resources that are on the new transportation routes in the Bering Sea. We have, as you've seen over the last few months, there are many potential accidents waiting to happen that we're not prepared for in our state and very concerned about. You had the Canadian tug up above the Northwest Territories leaking diesel very close to our waterways. So Alaskans will tell you they're very concerned about the lack of infrastructure that we have. We do not have an Arctic port yet. The closest we have is in Unalaska, so we don't have one up near the proximity of the Arctic itself. We don't have spill response plans in place that are being required of all the new vessel traffic that's coming through. So while we see the Arctic as a tremendous opportunity, we view it with a bit of trepidation because we know as Alaskans and as Americans we're unprepared. And I'll just slip in a little note about revenue sharing. I know Alice Rogoff talked about this yesterday. It's our hope that some of the revenue sharing and some of the lease dollars that were paid to the federal government, the $2.5 billion, will be returned to our state in the form of infrastructure development. Number 4 is the value and strengthen the resilience of communities and respect and integrate the culture and knowledge of Arctic peoples. And you'll see a lot about the notion of traditional knowledge. It's our hope, again, that other countries and people from the federal government will recognize that often it's the traditional knowledge, the local knowledge of people on the ground who've been watching the Arctic change and move, who've watched the Trans-Alaska Pipeline be built, that will give you the very best expertise.
So I'd like to just go back just for a moment on this slide. In June of 2013, we went to Barrow for a couple of days, and like Lesil said, is the first day is all listening, no talking from the suits that got off the jet. And so what was interesting about this, and this is where I'll go a little editorial, is of course the Chukchi was the headlines, but almost to a person, and Edward Etta leading the comment is that is our garden out there in the Chukchi and the Beaufort. We live on or near ANWR. The message we want you to tell the federal government is leave offshore for the future and drain ANWR first. This is, of course, the Arctic definition. What's so interesting about the Porcupine-Yukon line, it bisects Alaska. Just a little bit of history. In the 50s, when we were fighting for statehood, President Eisenhower wanted above that line to be a territory and below that line to be a state. Can you imagine what Alaska would be like if President Eisenhower prevailed? So, on the slide, policy statement, and of course you can read it for yourself, but I'll just highlight a few. It's our commitment to have vibrant communities that are consistent with responsibility for a healthy environment. Responsive to changing climate. Now, we had a little debate within the commission, changing climate, climate change, and there was two sides to it, and they really stuck to it. So here's the compromise we came up with. Every time there was a reference to changing climate, there was a reference to climate change. So, and anyway, it's for the communities, improved permitting, positive investment climate, and innovation should be emerging on opportunities and challenges.
I like this picture. This is a picture of Bob and I in Yellowknife. The people there in the legislature, in their assembly in Northwest Territories, they meet in a circle. And Lisa, I look to you to kind of think about this too in your hearings. The American model is very much, leaders sitting up on a pedestal and the general public and some sort of diocese and the public sort of sitting below. And colleagues sitting beside each other in sort of an awkward way of talking. And so one of the things I want to emphasize about working on Arctic issues that's been so exciting is Bob and I have also co-chaired the Arctic Caucus for the Pacific Northwest Economic Region. So he and I have had the opportunity to travel around to different countries, different territories and provinces in Canada to see how other Arctic nations think and lead. And I would say that we have a lot to learn in our country, in the United States, which is an Arctic nation only because of Alaska. And we have a lot to learn at the state level as well. How to be more collaborative, how to listen more, how to incorporate, even in the physical sense, other people's ideas as we move into the future. The vision and policy statement number 2 is to this end, to strengthen and expand cross-border relationships and international cooperation, especially bilateral engagements with Canada and Russia. And this is something that Bob and I are really going to work hard on this year. When I first started out in the legislature 15 years ago, we had regular exchanges with the Duma the various Dumas, they call them Dumas in Russia, many of you know that, in Khabarovsk and Sakhalin and Magadan. And while our two countries may be at odds, it doesn't prevent the local governments from continuing to build those important strategic relationships so that we can talk to one another when spills occur, when there are political conflicts, that you have that person that is friend to friend that you can talk to. Similarly, with our Canadian neighbors, we have advanced great bilateral agreements and hope to work on more in the area of shipping and fisheries to sustain and enhance the state participation at the Arctic Council. I know yesterday you heard a lot of discussion about the Arctic Council, the fact that the United States will chair for only the second time in global history that organization starting the end of April. Alaskans view themselves as a sovereign, and they want to be included in the process and the policy setting and the dialogue. To pursue opportunities to participate meaningfully as a partner in development of federal and international Arctic policies, thereby, as I said, incorporating state, local knowledge and expertise. And just for a second, I'll go back to the ANWR discussion, as Bob mentioned. That would be one area that I would highlight. It's our opinion as Alaskans that no federal government should be taking off the table entire areas of Arctic development for consideration without consulting the local people and incorporating them in their views. We're hopeful that today, those of you in the room will get a chance to see in our final report reference to, as Bob said, every elder in the Arctic to a person discussing the fact that if all energy options are on the table, they would like to have considered the idea of draining ANWR and parts of the National Petroleum Reserve, an area that elders are comfortable with development in, that they know that we've done successfully for 50 years before we move into the Arctic. And I think just that fact alone implores this president to reconsider his decision. Strengthen communication with Arctic Council permanent participants who include and represent the state's indigenous people. We thank the permanent participants that have been there for many years. Craig Fleener. Craig, are you here? There's Craig in the back. He is the governor's new special representative on the Arctic, and Craig has worked for many years in the permanent participants group, and we thank him for his work. And then finally, to reiterate the state's longtime support for ratification of the Law of the Sea Treaty.
So, as you can read there, enhance the security of the state through safe and secure Arctic. It's imperative that there is disaster and emergency response, that we have safe, secure marine transportation, sustain and develop community response and resource-related infrastructure. And then Alaska's favorite military branch is, of course, the Coast Guard. And working with them is that we'll coordinate, we'll have a safe nation, we'll have a safe Alaska. And why this is important to us, and it does say policy statement number 3, but really the 4 policy statements are all number 1. The next one is probably the most important.
Vision policy statement number 4 is to recognize Arctic Indigenous peoples' culture and unique relationship to its environment, including traditional reliance on subsistence as a way of life and food security. It also is to recognize that there's a spiritual connection to the land and the sea, and we just can't emphasize that enough. To build capacity to conduct science and research and advance innovation and technology, in part of providing support to the University of Alaska for Arctic research consistent with state priorities. And at the state legislative level, we're working on bolstering the revenue and support that we give the university in the area of the Arctic. We truly want the University of Alaska Fairbanks to be America's Arctic University. To employ integrated strategic planning that considers scientific, local, and traditional knowledge. As I said before, much of the local and traditional knowledge, you won't find it in a science treatise or a textbook in an advanced science class, but it's thousands of years old in its meaning and importance. to safeguard the fish, wildlife, and environment of the Arctic for the benefit of the residents themselves of the state, and to encourage more effective integration of local and traditional knowledge into conventional science, research, and resource management decision-making.
This is our final report to the legislature. Again, the audience that we implore is to think Arctic, do Arctic, act Arctic. And over the next few decades, that is our responsibility. Of course, the Arctic brings more activity, traffic, and people to the region. Enormous opportunities for our state, but huge potential risks. And it's critical that policymakers act strategically to advantage Alaska excuse me, in this changing Arctic. And in its report, it's a review of the economic, social, and environmental factors of relevance to the Arctic and more broadly to all Alaskans. The implementation plan, which we'll present you, has 4 lines of effort. It's drawn from our vision of the Arctic and strategic recommendations that form a suite of potential independent actions for legislative consideration. Again, our 4 lines of effort are as follows: economic and resource development, response capacity, healthy communities, science, and research. And over the next few slides, they're in more detail. We will try to go through those quickly so that we can maybe have some Q&A.
Excellent. And again, I know some of this might seem repetitious, but I hope rather it seems consistent, that you have vision statements and policy statements that include lines of effort that will direct the legislature to consider over the next year. So the first line of effort is to promote economic and resource development. With careful consideration and state investment, the Arctic region will continue to produce returns to the state and communities that ensure community health and vitality.
Response capacity will require strong partnership and communication to prepare for incidents, to respond, and develop best practices. Response capacity often grows with industry and economic development, and there must be a synergy in these lines of effort.
Line of effort number 3 is to support healthy Arctic communities. We believe that the quality of life can be improved for the whole Arctic region without compromising the economic security and well-being of other communities or the state as a whole. And I'll just make a side note here. A consistent theme and vision of the members of the Alaska Arctic Policy Commission is, again, that you have an opportunity to reduce suicide rates, dependence on alcohol and huffing, improvement in educational opportunities, all by giving hope. And hope, in many ways, is a job. It's knowing that the place that you live on the earth has a chance in the mix, that you, growing up as a young person, will have hope and have opportunities. So we see economic development, responsible economic development, healthy economic development of the Arctic as a key part of preserving and creating healthy communities.
Strengthen science and research. Alaska should, all the above, pursue strategies to broaden and strengthen influence on its agencies, its academic experts, its local governments and associations. Alaska needs to play a leading role in directing scientific research toward lines of inquiry that benefit Alaska: biology, geology, new technologies, especially energy. Often the research agenda is set by national organizations. Our message to our own legislature and to the executive branch: this search, while valuable, may not answer the questions that Alaskans would like to ask.
The Commission's work mobilizes the state's human, natural, and financial resources to address current Arctic needs. It recognizes that adequate resources should be available for future generations, and it understands that all of these might come in new and different forms as technology and demand shift over time.
Now we get to the fun part. This was the who's who of Alaskans that was chosen by the Speaker of the House at the time, Gary Stevens, and the current House Speaker, Mike Chenault. Many people applied to be on this commission, but it was these names, many that you will recognize, that worked for 2 years with us. You know, we agreed to disagree because there was 26 agendas. But in the end, we believe that this product is a good guide for Alaska, for the executive branch of Alaska, and for our federal partners.
So in wrap up, we have concerns about the changing and emerging Arctic. We're not afraid of change, and I think that's something that's a huge takeaway from people here in the room that aren't Alaskans. Alaskans are fundamentally not afraid of change. We're people that came boldly to our land from many other places as pioneers, as frontier people, and we understand that we're living in a place that sits right there perilously close to the edge of the earth. And so we're not afraid of change, but we need the ability to respond and adapt to it. And what we don't want to see are policies that come from other areas, other branches of government that inadvertently tie Alaskans' hands from responding and adapting to the change that's before them. All levels of government can work together to empower Alaskans to adapt and promote resilient communities. But we believe at the heart of it that people should come first. And that's one of my proudest things that Bob and I were able to do in interfacing with the White House strategy on the Arctic. Between the first policy draft and the last, we were able to insert the word people. And I think it's important that you understand that first draft really just referenced climate, ice, tundra, whale migration patterns without reference to the people who depend on them for food, all those kinds of things that are considerations. So when you think about the Arctic, we want you to also think about the people that live there. Resource development, shipping, and tourism is going to happen no matter what, all across the North, with or without Alaska at the table. The lack of infrastructure and the speed at which global development in the Arctic is occurring should be a call to action to all of you here today, to build and create, not to sit idly by, which would only increase our risk while preventing us from capitalizing on new opportunities. The example I give a lot would be, imagine if a giant new rail line, if you think about America, how we developed through railways, was slated to be built along with federal monies being received through the heart of Alaska. But what you had then were a series of federal policies that said none of the communities for which the railroad runs through will be able to participate in commerce. They won't be able to sell their goods, they won't be able to buy goods, and in many cases, they won't have roads to access that railroad. So just think about that for a second. All the people of Alaska would have all the impacts of that development. It's going to happen irrespective. Time and commerce moves forward, but at the same time, they're not able to take advantage of any of those opportunities. So when you really think about Alaskans and how we feel, that's a good example, because I know in many of your states you've had railroads come through. Our first approach is a people approach, as I said, that ensures economic viability as a way forward. Real protection of the Arctic comes by protecting its citizens. Economic development in the Arctic benefits the state and the nation. That may or may not be a national imperative, but I can tell you this, it's an Alaskan imperative. Thank you.
So on that closing comment, an imperative is Alaska has seen many imperatives. Dutch Harbor was bombed by the Japanese, and the Canadian government and the United States government forged a road through Canada, so we had the Alaskan. Then we had the dew line sites, and again, another Canadian-U.S. cooperation. Then we had the oil embargo in the early 70s, and that embargo helped build the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. We've had many imperatives, and we believe that this report is a part of a call to action. It's imperative that Alaskans protect its citizens, but benefit Alaskans as well. Thank you.
And now we'll take your questions.
Thank you. We have a quick 10 minutes, but real quick, I'd like to take the opportunity, if you and the members of the commission are here present in the room, to stand up and be recognized for all of your hard work on the report and in going forward. So please, especially the staff, because I know they don't get recognition sometimes. We have 10 minutes for Q&A. Do we have anyone? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Nicola Payne, and I'm with the Canadian Embassy in DC. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation, and clearly the report is on my to-read list once I get back. Just had a quick question about how you envisage increased state involvement in the Arctic Council as the U.S. chairmanship approaches.
So a couple of ways is that with Governor Walker naming a new cabinet post, Craig Fleener, as his Arctic advisor, and he does have experience as a permanent participant delegate from the Arctic Athabascans. The executive branch recognizes that it's going to get involved. And of course, the legislature will be a supporting partner to the executive branch, but myself, I've been a delegate to senior Arctic official meetings, and so with the Aleuts. And so there are opportunities, not only to the Arctic Council's senior Arctic official meetings, but also with working groups, is that there are there are opportunities for people to be involved, organizations to be involved. And in the legislature, we call upon the executive branch to work with the federal government. We call on the federal government to recognize that Alaskans are interested in being part of the decision-making process on Arctic Council activities and the mission and job that they're required to do to protect Arctic residents around the circumpolar globe.
Yeah, and I would just add that, we're trying to, through this report and other opportunities, to get Alaskans to be engaged in the subcommittee work. That's one of the things we've been told. Already through the permanent participants, Alaskans are participating, but the more Alaskans that put forward their names on behalf of the United States, essentially, the better off we are, because then you have Alaskans and their viewpoints at each of those levels. And as you know, in the Arctic Council, much of the work is actually done at that subcommittee level, the work group level, they call it. So that's one of the other areas that we're looking to get involved. I will tell you, we boldly suggested, Bob and I, at the beginning, that Alaska be given a seat, and that we be at least ex officio. Because of the unique size of Alaska and the fact that we do make the United States an Arctic nation, and we are a sovereign. We felt it would be beneficial to the Arctic community and beneficial to Alaskans to have a delegate directly there. But I'll tell you, one place the answer was no. But we do have, I know that's surprising, but we have made success in one other area, and I want to thank your country, and that's in the area of the Arctic Economic Council. Your Leona had the wisdom as the current chair, and I just, again, cannot emphasize enough how I believe the Canadian government, how well they have done in chairing the Arctic Council. It is a northern vision. Their government selected a northern leader, the premier of Nunavut, to lead the delegation, and as a result, all of the work that's come out over the last 2 years has been northern development for the people of the north. But to that end, they really resurrected the Arctic Economic Council. And when our government, federal government, told us the resources were not there in order to continue United States leadership there, Bob and I took over that and said, we're happy to do it. We're happy to put resources into it, and we want to thank them for that. They allowed us to consult with our local chambers, Native corporations, et cetera, and we put forward the names of Alaskans that are now sitting on that. So that's another place. They've already had one meeting. Drew Pierce, who many of you might know, a former state Senate president who works in the Arctic, said the Alaskans sort of took over. There were 15 of them in the room, and so I think that's a place where we can have some involvement as well. But we wish we had more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, if there's not any more questions, oh.
Good morning, Senator, Representative Herron. My name is Art Ivanoff. I'm the CEO for the Barents Sea Alliance, LLC. I think we have some huge challenges in Alaska as it relates to the budget, low oil prices, low production, and the impact of SB 21. And the question is, we've got this great policy, and we got these recommendations, but without appropriations, we fall short of really improving the way of life or the infrastructure in the Arctic, just preparing for what's coming down the pipe. I think there's a need to tool up, but if we have a policy and recommendations and it's empty, then it defeats the purpose. And I'm curious as to, how we're going to resolve the issue as it relates to budget, as well as, amping up in the Arctic.
That is where all the air has exited the room, is because of the current fiscal condition of many oil-producing jurisdictions. And so Alaskans have to step up to the plate regardless of geopolitics. And so your question is, how do we do this? And that's what the legislature and the governor of Alaska were attempting to do. Is it, you can call it a deficit, or should we call it an opportunity? When we had money, it was challenging then because we couldn't say no to a lot of things that maybe we should have said no to. Now we have an opportunity to say no to things that we could probably live without. We're only going to live within our means. That's all we can do. And so when we were wealthy, we lived within our means. Now that we're at this moment in time, we have to live with our means. And with that opportunity, we're going to provide basic services to Alaskans for the next couple of years.
Well, I would say, I'm going to answer the question in a few parts, but number one, this is what's so disconcerting about the federal action recently from the White House on ANWR. This goes to the heart of your question. How are Alaskans in this vast state with these challenges coming at us supposed to address our needs without revenue? And our revenue comes from the natural resources that we have to develop. We're located far away from the rest of the United States. We have a population of only 735,000 people. And in our Statehood Act, it was envisioned that we would develop those resources for the maximum benefit of our people. So I start there. It's unfortunate that is being challenged and possibly removed as a revenue source for us to develop the infrastructure we need in the Arctic. Number two, I would say private capital. Alice is familiar with this, Alice Rogoff, and has done a series of conferences in Alaska highlighting the amount of private capital. It's $100 billion estimated waiting to go into the Arctic, all parts of the Arctic, I want to emphasize. But as soon as Alaska can be open for business, that private capital is waiting to come in. And I do think it's going to be the private-public partnerships that will lead to a lot of the infrastructure we need. When you think about Shell, they've been the response vessels that we've had in our state. And when they're active and they've got their vessels, Alaskans are safer, and that's a fact. The other thing I look to is the federal government. It's been mentioned, revenue sharing. I trust that our senior senator and now junior senator, Dan Sullivan, who actually in '92 as one of the State Department heads on the Arctic, helped write the first American Arctic policy under President Bush. So Lisa's got a teammate now, I think, that's unstoppable in making the argument that in the Gulf they have revenue sharing. And that was just in 2006. Why wouldn't Alaskans have a portion of the revenue sharing for sure? So that's something we can look to. And if not revenue sharing now, how about a part of the $2.5 billion that's been collected in revenues from the lease sales? And then finally, I'll point to two things at the state level. We passed a bill last year creating an Arctic Infrastructure Fund in Ada, our state bank. And that's a yet unused mechanism that's out there. It allows for deferred interest on principal investments, and low-interest lending to qualified investors who want to partner with the state. And as you know, in many of these new states like ours, we're 55 years old, your state bank is going to be one of those things that helps you truly grow an economy. So private equity partners may be interested in lower interest rates. They might be interested in the kind of benefits that we could give them if they partner with us. And then, of course, the university. We're looking to the University of Alaska to take in nonprofit grants, to partner with other Arctic groups that are out there in the areas of science and research and hopefully in infrastructure. So I do agree this is not the perfect time with a $3.5 billion deficit, but I do also agree with Bob. It's a chance for Alaskans to really define what their priorities are. And in the Senate, we've made the Arctic one of our 4 priorities for the year. So thank you, Art.
If I can, just a real quick point. I just want to say that there is one Arctic, and we are the Arctic people.
Yes.
And there's a need for tooling up. I think just, amping up, building strategic oil response depots is necessary, using our villages as sites that could really aid as it relates to search and rescue first responders. I think there's opportunity, and despite the deficit that we face in Alaska, I think there's still a great chance to make it really count for villages. We've got a significant problem with underemployment, unemployment, and I think there's ways of alleviating some of the problems that we have in our communities by building our capacity, and I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator McGuire and Representative Herron.